the Cowboys, who kind of made a shake at the top of the draft. A guy that started to gain a little bit more traction, going higher than people anticipated with Tyler Booker. They take him 12th overall, a guard in the top 12. What were your thoughts on that, Austin?
Listen, we're gonna start with the negative because I didn't love the Tyler Booker pick to start, but overall this draft for the Cowboys was great. I have to say that. So don't click off the video, Cowboys fans. You had a great draft. It's just I didn't love the first pick, man. Tyler Booker. First of all, it's a guard at 12, Dakota, and guards at 12.
Yeah.
Just we don't love guards that high. But listen, I'll give them grace on that because look how the NFL was valuing these interior offensive linemen throughout this draft. All the teams are valuing that high. So we'll take that out of it. But my next biggest problem is he's just not a super clean prospect, man. Like he's not a
Yeah.
good run blocker. He tested very poorly. He's not a very athletic guy. He has bad movement skills. And so I just like, okay, you're taking a guard at 12, first guard off the board, and he's not a clean prospect. I kind of compare it to the Peter Skoronsky pick a couple years ago, Dakota, when the Titans took what Skoronsky at 11. And
Yep.
even some people then were like, oh, that's a little high to take a projected guard at the next level. But Skoronsky, remember, he was a tackle coming out.
Yep.
Some people projected him as a tackle. And he was just a much cleaner prospect, man. Like he was a better guard prospect than Tyler Booker was. And he was drafted at 11th around the same area. And to be honest, Dakota, I don't even know if that pick's worked out. Just not a
Yeah.
lot of guards high in the draft work. And it's not like Tyler Booker is some elite level prospect and they're trying to replace Zach Martin with Tyler Booker. I mean, listen, you're not replacing Zach Martin with anyone. Zach Martin is a first ballot, no doubt, or Hall of Famer. Listen, it's a risky first round pick, but I get it to a certain degree because like they probably thought we're not getting a starting guard past the first round, past this pick. So from that standpoint, I understand it.
Yeah, and it was clear watching them react, Jerry and Mike and them reacting that, or sorry, Schottenheimer reacting that. They clearly loved Booker and wanted him in there. I agree, from the value of taking a guard at 12 is a little tough, but as you pointed out, three tackles went in the top nine. Gray Zabel, Donovan Jackson both come off the board after that. So they probably were, maybe they set the tone by taking him there. But they clearly wanted to get a definitive starting caliber guard, and probably to your point, felt if they don't do that here, it's not happening. And one thing I will give Jerry credit for, he gets a lot of flack, but man, the guy has drafted offensive linemen
So
incredibly
well.
well. Like
So
they
well.
built their entire offensive line themselves through the draft. That has been one of the best one in the NFL for the past few seasons before, Frederick and now Martin, everybody started to retire, or Tyron getting a little bit old. So, I at least trust his process with that. And, he'll obviously be a starter. And he was the consensus, to your point, he still has, so question marks, was the consensus number one guard. But they at least walk away with that. So they love building the trench, and Jerry loves that. And he continued that trend.
And
Another
yeah,
Tyler.
I love, another Tyler, which is really weird. They have three Tylers on the offensive line. But I loved your point, man, because if anyone's going to overdraft an offensive lineman, I trust the Cowboys to do it because they've just hit on this year after year. I mean, you really go back to the Travis Frederick days when they drafted him high, or Zach Martin when they drafted him high. I mean, they just hit on these guys consistently. So I get it. Like, they believe in their process. And if they think Tyler Booker's the guy, then I get that. But the reports were that they were debating him and Walter Nolan
Yes.
pretty heavily, which is fascinating because if you told me you came away with Walter Nolan, Donovan Ezeraku, and Siobhan Revel in the third round, I would love that even more, man. I love these next two picks they had. But I mean, I would have personally taken Walter Nolan over Tyler Booker just because I just think he's a better prospect at his position. But again, Cowboys, I get it. You're great at taking offensive linemen. You took another offensive lineman to start. See how it works out.
Yeah, I do agree with that. I personally just loved Walter Nolan. I mocked him in our official mock 11 to the 49ers in the What We Do one, so loved him as a prospect, loved the interior pass rush. And to your point, what they ended up with their defense would be looking pretty scary right now, and it still
Yeah.
does. They still got two really good guys, but And it's also another one like the Browns where if you just shuffle the order slightly, then you're feeling absolutely fantastic about the class. Not to say that it's still not a really good one, but just the order they came in. Um, so yeah, they then take a guy who slipped to the second in Donovan Ezeraku, edge out of Boston College, who is an absolute dog. So they grab him in the second, and I absolutely love the pairing of him with Michael Parsons.
Oh,
To have
dude.
two absolute monsters coming off of the edge. And then to your point, Siobhan Revel, corner out of East Carolina, who got hurt this past season, like a lot of these guys, but was an absolute stud and another guy who people were projecting to at least, at the very minimum, go in the second round, and was a fantastic athlete. And the Cowboys had the breakout from Deron Bland, and then Trayvon was dealing with injuries, so they definitely need the help in the secondary. So adding those two pieces to that defense were fantastic.
Yeah, man. I mean, to me, like we said this a couple episodes Dakota ago, but they got 3 first round talents. I mean, that's a fact, dude. I mean, the all 3 of their first picks were mocked in the first round at some point. I mean, Donovan Ezeraku, I thought for sure would go in the first round with all the
Yeah,
question marks that these other edge rushers had. Like Donovan
yeah,
Ezeraku really didn't have many question marks other than he's not the best run defender, but that doesn't stop teams taking chances on edges. But he had a 90.7 pass rush grade for PFF this past season, 25.8 pass rush win rate. Fantastic numbers, man. I mean, he is a really, really good pass rusher. And listen, I thought like he was one of the safest prospects, man. I thought, I could have seen him. This is crazy to say. I could have seen him going 9 to the Saints, dude. Like that was like a real possibility for me. And some of the mocks I did. So listen, getting him at 44, absolutely a phenomenal value. And like you just touched on, Dakota, pairing him with Micah Parsons, man. I mean, and that's why I was intrigued by. Okay, if you also got Walter Nolan, then it's like, oh my lord,
yeah.
this defensive line is just terrifying. Like, who are you going to block on this defensive line? So yeah, dude, love that pick. And then the Revel pick, dude. I mean, like one of the higher upside corners in the entire draft. And like the Cowboys, we just talked about how they're good at evaluating offensive line. They've been pretty solid at evaluating corner as well, dude. I mean, they've hit on some corners drafted outside the first round, which is really not
Yep.
very typical. So I think Rebel's another guy that they could come away with saying, hey, we got another super solid starting NFL cornerback in the third round.
Yeah, yeah. I remember back when Trayvon fell to the second. I was, as a Titans fan, I would have been happy if we drafted him in the first that year when he came out. Another tall corner too, 6'2", adding that length on the outside. Love that for them. And high athlete. So yeah, adding more pieces to that defense that can make an impact really early on. To a defense that honestly took a pretty massive step back last season. Um, Obviously, injuries plagued the Cowboys last year pretty heavily, so the season was almost felt like a wash. But the defense took a step back. Run defense, particularly early on, was pretty atrocious, which is another reason where Walter Nolan would have been an interesting fit. He's more of a pass rusher, but still adding to that defensive line. Um, but still love those picks. And then they had Jaden Blue, running back out of Texas, who has been stuck behind some of Texas's really good running backs over the past few seasons, with Jonathan Brooks for the past couple. 4.38 speed. Doesn't have a ton of production. Had a little bit of a fumbling issue, but had the ability to more force some missed tackles though. So kind of a dynamic weapon potentially for them out of the backfield there in the 5th round.
Yeah, man, it's interesting, dude. Just looking at our lands, he is listed as RB number 2 right now for Dallas. That's interesting, dude. Like they're kind of sticking to this fact that I don't know, maybe Jerry got so burned by the Zeke contract for that held him down for so long that he's like, dude, we're putting absolutely no investment into this position anymore. But they got Javonte Williams. He's currently listed as the
Yep,
starter. Well, Javonte Williams has been injury prone. So
a
Dallas
lot.
fans, don't be surprised if Jaden Blue's RB number 1 come week 2 or 3. I wouldn't be surprised by that at all. And maybe they still go target a guy. I mean, I don't know like who's necessarily out and available, and I don't see them making a trade for running back. So listen, Jaden Blue in the 5th round, yeah, does he have some question marks? He does, but he's going to contribute to this team one way or another because they just don't have the depth at that position. And I just to maybe sound like a hypocrite here. We just got talked about or done talking about how we don't like a lot of investment in the running back position, but I feel like this is kind of they're making a strong statement. Like we just don't care. Like we're just not going to get a starting caliber guy. Um, so who knows? We'll see how that works out. But Jaden Blue could be RB1 before long.
Yeah, it's interesting to know if Chavon, like with Ezeraku falling and then with Revel falling, like would they have gone running back earlier if it wasn't for the fact they're sitting there like how are these dudes on the board? And they do double up. They take Phil Maffa, running back out of Clemson in the seventh, who is like the opposite of Jadon Blue. You know, he is big power back. He's like what 6'1", 234. So completely
Bruiser.
different body. Yeah. So the more the bruiser, and then you got Blue, who's more of the, you know, a little bit more agile, versatile running back. You can use him out of the backfield a bit more. So don't heavily invest in running back like people kept projecting them to in terms of the value at top of the draft, but they do double up, get a couple guys in there, as we know, and we just talked about with Jacory as well. Like these dudes could end up being starters in the NFL. That happens all the time. A lot of running backs in the NFL are guys drafted in the third or later. So love them doubling up with how many picks they had. They had the capital to do it. A couple of the picks, took Shamar James, linebacker out of Florida, who is, not super productive, not super athletic, 6'1", 222, pretty, standard typical. Ajani Cornelius, some more tackle depth to come in and compete. They did take a defensive tackle out of UCLA, so they did add to the front. Kind of surprised they didn't. They did take another, but from Maryland in the seventh. So kind of surprised they didn't invest in the interior of the defensive line a bit more earlier. They did, they didn't really have. They did get there. They picked up Solomon Thomas, so they did pick up one person. That's not a great signing. They did get Osa re-signed. So that was their their main thing. And they still have Mozzie Smith, so maybe it was a little overblown, but I think pass rush specifically and Osa sticking around was helpful for that. But really need some development out of Mozzie.
Exactly, because they're still
drafted that late.
Yeah, no doubt. And they're still lacking that run defense. I mean, you just talked about how the run defense was so poor last year, and it has been what it feels like for a couple years now. That's why they drafted Mozzie Smith to fix that run defense, and it just hasn't happened. So who knows? Well, that's kind of still up in the air. But listen, I like you could have forced a defensive interior earlier or running back like we were just talking about, but the two guys they got in the second and third round, I think part of that, they are positions I need, but you could also argue those were best player available in those spots. So I really loved what they did with their first three picks. I think overall their draft was fine. My biggest problem with Jerry and their process is the work they do in free agency, or the lack thereof of work they do in the free agency. They just don't believe in filling needs in free agency, man. And I think that could have avoided a lot of these problems. Like you go fill a guard need in free agency, well then all of a sudden you don't have to force the Tyler Booker pick. Or if you go get a Najee Harris in free agency, so all of a sudden you have a viable NFL starting running back. Now they signed Javonte Williams, but I just wouldn't trust Javonte Williams as of right now, just because he's a good player, but he's been hurt the majority of his career. So I think the Cowboys draft really well, and they did so this year, but they need to focus on filling some of these gaps on their team in free agency when you have the ability to do so.
Yeah, they are a team with the capital to spend, as from just an ownership perspective when it comes to signing bonuses and things like that play into where players want to go. And they're a big market, so people want to be in Dallas. With all the memeing and joking that goes on with the Cowboys, they're still a place people want to be, and they're one of the most valuable sports franchises in the world. I also found out, I knew Kaiir Elam got traded and forgot it was the Cowboys. So that's where he's at. So, he's not on Buffalo's roster. They trade from taking a shot on a younger guy who hasn't panned out very well. But to your point, just looking at the free agents they picked up, they traded for numerous people. They traded for Milton. They traded for Kenneth Murray with the Titans, and then traded for Kaiir Elam. So it's just nobody stands out as a big signing, which you think the Cowboy, and Jerry just never does it. To your point, he does not fill needs through free agency, but they have the ability to do it, and I'm surprised. And just looking at the roster, it makes me just, a little annoyed, because I'm like, you guys could be a little bit better if you just put a little bit more effort into that. And They got Miles Sanders as another one of the ones that like a running, and it's like that dude is on his way out. He's done. I'm
Exactly.
sorry.
A lot of these dudes we're talking about they're trading for and everything. Like a lot of these dudes might not even be on the roster. I love
Yeah,
trading for Joe Milton because Joe
I
Milton,
do. Yeah,
great developmental quarterback, whatever. But a lot of these dudes, I mean, Elon might not even make the team. I'm not sure. So yeah, man. Again, they had a great draft. They came around with 3 first round
yeah,
picks. In my opinion, 3 first round talents in one single draft is fantastic. It's just some of the ordering was a little bit weird, especially with taking Tyler Booker. And you just kind of avoid that, like we're saying, if you focus on filling that need in free agency. I mean, it wasn't a massive free agent year, like as far as depth is concerned and everything like that. But
right.
there was starting guards that you could go out and get and fill that Zach Martin gap without forcing Tyler Booker at 12 overall.
Yeah, and I agree. I do like the draft overall. But again, the whole drafting for need thing, never a big fan of it. Luckily, the board worked out pretty well for them. And they add depth at important positions like along the defensive line and at tackle. So, and they also major signing that stands out from a free agent or UDFA, undrafted free agent perspective is Trayshawn Holden. So the other receiver, so it's Tez Johnson from Oregon and then Trayshawn Holden. So that's a pretty solid signing. A guy that could work his way onto, one thing we didn't talk about, which stands out, is they didn't draft a receiver.
Yep.
That's one thing that really surprised me. They traded for Mingo, still young, but just really hasn't shown a ton. They they actually signed. I'll be shocked if he makes the roster. They signed your boy Paris Campbell is currently on the roster. That's not usually what you want.
No, not at all.
So surprised they didn't invest more in receiver other than just UDFAs would be my biggest surprise with the class in general.
Yeah, and that is an interesting topic because I do kind of wonder if T Mac was there, what
Yeah.
that decision would have been. We'll never know because the Panthers took him at 8, but would have been fascinating if they came away with T Mac with the other haul they got, dude. That would
Oh,
honestly, if they
couldn't
did
see
that, that would have been my favorite draft in the NFL. So, yeah, dude. But like I agree that there needs to be more investment in receiver number 2, because dude, and I don't want to wish this on him because he's one of the best receivers in the league, and I'm definitely don't want this to happen. It's just if CD Lamb goes down with an injury, all of a sudden this is the worst receiving core in the NFL.
literally.
So, like, you're one CD Lamb injury away from having literally the worst position group in the entire league. So,
Which is never what you want to be.
no.
And again, all those scenarios of even some of the guys that went the second, though, of pairing some of these guys with CD Lamb, you just start to be like, that suddenly becomes one of the best duos in the NFL because CD is so good. But overall, still a solid draft from them. They need to address that wide receiver too. Still, we'll be curious to see what happens with them this year after Dak coming back and beefing up the O line a little bit more. Be curious to see what the Cowboys do this season. What did Renee Bugner's composite score say about the Cowboys?
They had a phenomenal draft according to the graders, and I agree. I agree with the graders. I think they did have a phenomenal draft. They ranked number 7 overall in the NFL, and I think it just speaks to listen. You literally got 3 dudes who were projected first round players at any given points with your first 3 picks. So despite the potential reach on Tyler Booker, now Tyler Booker could end up being a great player, but I think as far as the consensus is concerned, he was a reach. Despite that, you still came around in the second and third and got 2 of the biggest values in the draft. So you kind of made up for it in a way, as a whole. So yeah, 7th overall in the NFL, which I don't necessarily disagree with.
Yeah, and that is really solid. So feeling pretty good, Cowboys fans, going into 2025. So that is the Cowboys 2025 class. Who's your
All right.
favorite for the Cowboys? We'll backpedal slightly
I-
here.
I'll go Donovan Ezeraku for the Cowboys in the second round. We'll add that to the Cowboys video. Donovan Ezeraku, loved to hit that value there. I thought potential top 10 player, maybe. Like if some like teams didn't believe in the edge, like all the edge questions, all the off-field questions with some of the edge rushers. So yeah, Donovan Ezeraku in the second round, fantastic value for the Cowboys.
Same note, Siobhan Rebel, third round, another dude that could have gone at the late first. These corners dropping, love the length, love having that depth to their cornerback room, and a piece that again could be a starter in the third round, which you always love that value. So